big tree out in the back of my house. And I call her the grandmother tree because in the summer she shades my patio, and she's huge. They cut off a limb, and I counted the rings, and there were over 50 rings in just the limb that they took out. And so she's my grandmother. She shades me in the summer, and then she's gracious enough to drop all of her leaves and give me the sunshine in the winter. I love this tree. I just love this tree. And every once in a while, one of the companies threatens to cut it down because it's messing with the power lines. But the first time I ever heard this, I was quite distressed and thought about it. I obsessed about it. And I drew up this picture of myself in my imagination until it became real. Of putting on my finest ministerial wear and my highest heels and climbing up that puppy and sitting in protest. Anybody came together. And do I need to tell you, I really hope that day never comes. I know, we'll have film at 11. But has anybody ever felt that way about a tree before? I know some of you have. It's this sense of a kind of a citizenship of its own, this tree, these trees. And it reminds me of this passage from Charles Eisenstein's book called A More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. We need to come into a direct, caring, sensuous relationship with this forest, this mountain, this river, this tiny plot of land, and protect them for their own sake rather than for an ulterior end. That's not to deny the danger of greenhouse gases from the cutting down of trees, but ultimately our salvation must come from recovering a direct relationship to what's alive in front of us. You know, this has been a reoccurring theme for me in this series, 10 Commandments 10 new commandments for a world that works for everyone. And that is in the face of the worry and the sorrow we may feel about clear-cutting trees and cutting down the forest in the name of development and progress, that the thing to do, the antidote to that sorrow and pain, is to fall in love with the trees and the grass and the forests and the gardens. I mean, we did it when we were kids, I think. I did anyway. Do you remember the fascination of a ladybug? Or a praying mantis? How cool that was. Or the first time you ever saw a comet shooting through the sky. That wide-eyed wonder and a kind of innate knowing that you belong to that this is part of who you are. That's the antidote to the fear and tendency towards despair that we might have when we look at our reality around us. Falling in love with it all. The wonder and awe and true love of being a member of this earth community. So another theme that seems to be recurring in this 10 Commandments series is the intelligence of the earth and of the universe. I noticed the other day that my grandmother tree has buds on it. Now, in January, that may not sound so smart, but what happened was in that warm spell, this tree-sunshine relationship started to grow and create for spring. And then with the cold snap, the intelligence picked up on that and said, wait, not time yet. It's an intimate relationship between the tree and the sunlight, that it won't begin again, it won't grow those buds into leaves until the sunshine gives it permission. It says, it's time now. Go for it, Granny. Go for it. It's a beautiful thing to watch, this unfolding from this point where the leaves are so bare, the trees are so bare. So it wasn't foiled by the cold snap, it wasn't fooled by the warm spell. It's just a sensitive reaction and dance between the tree itself and the light and warmth. And there is yet a third theme, and that is that the earth is a system of systems. And as we look at each system, we see that it's a whole within a whole. And what we know about wholeness is the only healing to be done is to remember wholeness, to recognize it, and call it forth. So when we see the earth as a whole system, with all of her systems working within, it's alive and shifting all the time. And when we consider and allow that wholeness to be the truth, then we heal. And the world heals. You know, when I first started this Ten Commandments theme, I somehow and naively thought it would be easy to put together 10 new commandments for a world that works for everyone. It was as if, you know, in the time of Moses, God just looked down at that wild bunch of people and just ticked off a list. Well, a whole bunch of things. If you don't do these, then you'll be able to survive in some kind of a society. Just don't steal, don't kill, don't covet, don't run with scissors, you know, those kinds of things. And then it would be okay. But when it came to this century, the 21st century, I had a heck of a time putting together a list that was that simple, that would actually create that civilization that the first 10 Commandments mean. I mean, my list might read something like, don't leave the water running. Recycle everything you can. Buy organic. Stop collecting stuff. You get the drift. That would be my list of 10 Commandments. But, you know, that list began to sound a little bit like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Oh, of course. Now, I don't mean to say that it's not important for us to do those things. It is. And if every one of us did those things, it would make a huge difference in the world. But the underlying thing is, we need to reassess our entire relationship with the earth. It's not a list of don't-dos. It's falling in love again with the earth, because what we love, we take care of. And if we stop treating her like a low-rent apartment, you know, the one where you say, I don't care about this place, I don't care about putting dents in the wall. But instead, as our home. And really, the only one we've ever found, with all of our eyes in the sky, the only home we've ever found. If we start treating Mother Earth like we do our living rooms, well, myself accepted, but how much different would the world be? It's interesting to think about. So today's message is called, Thou Shalt Tend This Earth Garden. And I love the picture Steve put up for it. That's a wonderful picture. Thou shalt tend this earth garden. And it has to do with appreciation for soil, seeds, and plants. We owe our very lives to the first plants that invented oxygen. And we owe our ongoing survival to the plants who create food for us. So let's talk about food for a minute. Want to? I marvel every time I go to the grocery store. There are approximately 47,000 items in the store. And yet aisle after aisle after aisle of what? Potato chips, cookies, candy, beer, wine, breakfast cereal. Where's the food? I have to go hunting if I want to find food in the grocery store. And if you ever read labels, do people read labels? I see a lot of hands go up. Isn't that an interesting lesson in chemistry? I mean, some of those things that are in our grocery stores have never even been close to a food source. And yet, we call that our food. I saw a great story, a film called Fresh. I recommend it. I rented it on Amazon Prime or something. And here are some of the things that I learned from all the research that I did. Our food has changed more in the last 50 years than the entire 10,000 years before that. That our food since 1950 has lost approximately 40% of its nutrients. Sounding good? Sounding tasty? In France, they link 40% of cancers to the food they eat. And it would probably be similar here. How did this happen? The industrializing of our food production is how it happened. The loss of the small family farm, the removal of animals from the small family farm, so that we have mega centers with monocultures. Thousands and thousands and thousands of one animal or one crop living together, because it is the gestalt, it is the system that keeps it healthy. When you have the chickens following the cows, and the hay following the chickens in the same field, is how you keep it alive and well. And yet, we've gone to these, it's like trying to make all the pigs lockstep together. You can't do it. Mother Nature hates straight lines. Mother Nature hates monoculture. Mother Nature loves diversity. And what we've done in our food production is eradicate that. We've made it all one way. And what it's doing is we have to use fake fertilizers instead of manure. And the fertilizers add heavy metals and also leach the nutrients out. So what we have going is a cycle of emptying the soil instead of filling it. But what I love about this movie, Fresh, is that it's a good news story. It's a story about how the small farm is coming back into existence, and how, what's it called, what's my word? Not sufficiency farming, but Janelle, what is that? Thank you! Sustainable farming. Sustainable farming is coming back, and more people are turning back to farming and learning and working with the cycle of nature, the systems of nature, which our ancestors learned, and will be regaining the foods that our ancestors ate. I find that so exciting. I find it good news going on in the world today. The monoculture system can't stand, because we're not standing for it. We are not standing for it. People are remembering how to work with the soil and the plants and the animals all together in a system. Taking the food production back from the handful of giant corporations who own our food from seed to grocery store, and who frankly don't have our best interests at heart. And when we recognize that and realize that and accept it, then we can figure out how to use our shopping dollars to the best advantage for our own bodies, for our families, and for the planet. I talked about, one of the farmers, I love this, one of the farmers put it like this, and it rang in my heart. If you're committed to healing the land, you do something different. And for me, that something is to remember and respect the design of nature and work with it instead of trying to conquer it. We're done with conquering, aren't we? It hasn't worked. It's time to give it up. I talked about last week about the thousands of organizations that are springing up at grassroots levels, and this is not-for-profit organizations. And he viewed them, I think, so interestingly, as an immune response from Mother Earth and from mankind. Like an immune system going to work for the survival of the species and the survival of the planet. Do you know there are over 5,000 of these nonprofit organizations working with food? The nutrition of it, the growing of it, all aspects of food. Over 5,000 organizations. Thousands and thousands of people committing their hearts and their time to correcting this mistake we've made. It's just a mistake. It's just a mistake. And it's one that can be corrected. We're now beginning to see the world differently. Rising up in the name of love for the planet that we live on and a shared desire for this species to survive, as well as the other species on the earth. In The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible, which is a great book by Charles Eisenstein, he asks us to imagine that we were alive 30,000 years ago, and we foresaw everything that was to come. Do that with me. We had a vision of everything that was to come, the symbolic language, the naming and labeling of the world, agriculture and the domestication of the wild, dominion over other species and of the land, the machine, the mastery of natural forces, the forgetting of how beautiful and perfect our world is, the atomization of a society, a world where humans fear to drink from the streams and the rivers, where we live among strangers and don't even know the people next door. When we kill across the planet with the touch of a button, imagine that you could foresee all of this. How would you help people across time? Well, he suggests that they planted 3 seeds at that time in this garden of humanity that was to grow. And I've changed them a little bit because I like mine better. No offense, Charles. The first seed is now taking root all these years later, and that's the indigenous populations of the world. Those people that refused to try to conquer Mother Nature, but instead upheld the traditions of living with the earth and learning her ways. These people have carried forward all these years, and we're now beginning to listen to them. We're now beginning to hear the wisdom of what they have to tell us. I love this story. For example, to this day, the Mi'kmaq people name their pine trees by the sound of the wind breathing through the branches 1 hour before sunset in the fall. They name their trees. Elders can remember the names of previous ancient stands of trees. And they can detect how the trees are changing by remembering their names and hearing how the wind sounds blowing through the trees now. They can detect how the trees are faring in the face of acid rain and pollution. Wow, is that an intimate relationship with Mother Nature? Second seed, and this is my second seed, that our ancient elders left us, I think, is wonder. That sense of being able to look up in the sky and say, I wonder who I really am. I wonder what it is and where it came from and how it works, and I call that science. And that scientific bent has carried down all through the ages to now, when we're through dissecting and cataloging the earth. We're done with that. Now we are in the great space of reconciliation, because what science has proven to us is that there are no lines, there are no separations. We are all light. We are all energy. Everything is light and energy, and everything else is made up. Wow. So that we're beginning to listen to the new science and say there's something different going on than they told me when I was in school. There's something new going on, and it's good news. It's good news. There is only one thing happening here. Call it light, call it life, call it God. There's only one thing. And the third seed is wisdom. And this is the wisdom that has been passed down through our spiritual traditions, through the Buddhists and the Sikhs and the Christian mystics and Ernest Holmes, and we're a part of that movement. And that is the wisdom that says, what I think about comes about. I can change my world by the way that I behold it. I can change my world by what I think and believe. And so you put those 3 seeds in the ground and you put it there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and we're the ones that are reaping the reward of that. Those 3 seeds now have grown into life, and they're beginning to influence strongly our recovery. Our recovery. 3 seeds: our inherent love of the earth, our inherent curiosity about the earth, and our inherent power to change. So I'm going to close with a quote from Janine Marie Hogan from Spiritual Ecology, The Cry of the Earth. If we approached rivers, mountains, dragonflies, redwoods, and reptiles as if all are alive, intelligent, suffused with soul, imagination, and purpose, what might this world become? Who would we become if we participated intentionally with such an animate earth? Would the world quicken to life if we taught our children and taught ourselves to sing and celebrate the stories embedded in the body of the earth, in the granite bones of mountains and rainy sky tears, in trembling volcanic bellies and green scented hills? What if we apprehended that by nourishing the land and creatures with generous praise and gratitude, with our remembrance or our tears, we rejuvenate our own relationship with wild earth and possibly revitalize the anima mundi, or soul of the earth? So let's take that into prayer. You just breathe all that in, letting go of whether you agree with what I've said or if you don't. It's all just stuff to think about. And so we drop that head from the head to the heart and go inward to spirit, to the soul of the earth, the soul of the universe, the great reality. And we embody a new story of mankind, a new story of the planet. And that is one of wholeness and perfection and healing. For that is what the universe is. That is what God is. Perfection, wholeness, oneness, allness. And in that oneness is all power, all presence, all good, joy, harmony, abundance, order, peace, and beauty. And so I breathe that in, knowing that that wholeness is my wholeness. And when I acknowledge my wholeness and become aware of it, I find all of those things present in my life now. God is love and I am loving. God is joy and I am joyful. God is abundance and I am abundant and prosperous. God is order and my life is orderly. God is peace and I am peaceful. And so I claim, with the cleansing of my mind, that this is the truth, the only truth about who I am and who each of us is. Each of us is the living presence of something whole, perfect, and complete. I claim that. I own that. I see only that as I move out into my world. Everywhere. Wholeness, wellness, perfection. For that's my job on earth, is to know wholeness, to reveal more wholeness, more goodness, with every step, with every interaction, with everything I look at, everything I touch, every breath I take. more wholeness, more wholeness, more wholeness. And in that, I am a healer. Each of us is a healer. I claim for the planet rapid quantum leap ahead in the species called humans, in our consciousness, in our awareness, and in our doing. Knowing that this is not an impossibility, for we know from science that quantum leaps are how the universe works. I accept it. I accept a leap in my own growth, my own soul, and in the growth of this center and all of her people. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for this knowing, for this center, for this truth that feels far more real to me than the little reality that I see out there.